I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning and welcome to the July 29th County Commission meeting. I would remind you to silence your cell phones. The meeting documents are on the end of the counter next to Commissioner Kelly, and Robert in the front row has listening devices if you need them.
Routine business. Item number 1 is consider a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Item 2 is to approve the County Commission minutes of July 22nd, 2014.
Move for approval. Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Item 3 are bills to be paid in the amount of $590,781.41.
Pay the bills. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Comments? No comments. Lots of highway department bills in there. So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
There are no reports today. Item 5 is personnel actions. A is consider a motion to approve the routine personnel actions.
Make that motion. Second.
Any questions for Carrie? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
There are no application for abatements today. Item 7, notices and requests. A notice from Wild Prairie Winery of intent to conduct a fundraising raffle at their annual Fall Festival of Arts benefiting the Edith Sanford Breast Foundation on September 12th and 13th has been received. There are no planning and zoning notices, and there are no petition for compromise of lien. The next item is an opportunity for public comment.
This is the time when anybody can speak about something that is not on the agenda. And if you would just identify yourself for the record.
Good morning, Doug Barthel, Sioux Falls Police Chief. Just wanted to give a brief update on the Van Epps Park issue and some of the concerns with that and answer any questions that you might have. First off, just as a little history, if you think back a year ago, the park was virtually unused and frankly underutilized. Our officers have dealt with transients and drinking issues for years. It's not a new issue, but frankly what has occurred is we've had issues along the bike trail, the River Greenway, downtown. They would sit on the planters, the library. We basically pushed them out of those areas, and they've all started to congregate at Van Epps Park. Beginning of this summer, the park has always been one that allowed alcohol consumption, beer and wine, and that word got out earlier this year, and so there was a core group of people that we dealt with, and some of those also came from the Pettigrew Heights area, that began to congregate there because they knew they could then drink alcohol there. It really wasn't a huge issue for us at that time. There were maybe 2 to 3 picnic tables full of people that were fairly well behaved and would sit and drink their alcohol and socialize throughout the day. As the summer progressed, then the word got out, and actually in talking with a lot of them, they had no idea that they could drink alcohol there. So it's now starting to become a social gathering place for many more people. And it's quite obvious from news reports dealing with the public, other comments that we've heard that people don't want them congregating. They're doing this sort of things they are. We're not out to try and solve homeless or alcohol issues or all that. We know that we can't do that with the magic wand and just by taking care of problems at that park, but as I said, it's quite obvious that people don't want the issues at that park. And I know some of the county employees have had issues with parking in the lot, which is just adjacent to that. As you are probably aware, the city has agreed to purchase the fence to put up on the north side, which actually I believe they're going to be digging the post holes today, and hopefully it'll be completed by tomorrow. It's going to be a 6-foot vinyl coated black chain link type fence. Again, that won't totally solve the problems, but hopefully it'll at least keep the intoxicated folks from wandering into your parking lot. Long term, again, we don't have the magic wand, but we do believe that alcohol is a central theme in causing a lot of the issues that are going on there. So we do have some plans in place to gain park board approval, which will occur in August, and then present that to the city council to ban alcohol at that park. Currently, there's 10 parks in the city that ban alcohol. We also, if we rewind a couple of years, we had a lot of issues at Tower Park, which is up on North Main Avenue. A lot of complaints from that neighborhood. We pushed them out of there. Our concerns are if we simply ban it at Van Epps Park, all they're going to do is move back to that park. So that's why we've included that in that proposal as well. That ban, though, wouldn't go into effect until at the earliest October 3rd. So we're basically doing that for next year. I do think that banning alcohol there is going to solve a lot of the issues. And if you just think back to last week when there was a day where it rained most of the day, if you drove by that park, there were very few people that were hanging out there. Now, I don't think they stopped drinking. There's obviously some that are homeless that are still going to probably drink in public, but I think there's a large portion of those folks, and I know there are several in there that do have homes or apartments, and so they obviously went somewhere else to drink on that day. They aren't out in the winter time either, so as I said, we're not going to solve the issue, but I think we're probably going to relocate some of that. A lot of the problems that are occurring from people that weren't part of that initial core group to begin with, and so if we can frankly get them to go back to where they used to go to drink, which I think is probably in a lot of their homes and in other areas, that will hopefully solve some of these problems. We do know that we aren't going to eliminate it, and the concern is where are they going to go next. But if you, again, go back a year ago, the areas where they weren't near as big a concern as they are here. This is obviously a big issue with the citizens and the city. It's been on the news pretty much every day of the week for the last week and a half. So we're giving it a lot of effort. We put a ton of resources into it with our officers, and we're going to continue to do that. We still want to keep people safe, and we'll address the issues as they come. But Dave Fifley is here with the city attorney's office in case there's questions about the whole legality process with the alcohol ban. But other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Commissioner Benega?
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. I do appreciate, and I think that county employees appreciate the fact that the city moved very swiftly in getting this project at least fenced so they can at least protect their personal property and their cars and feel safe. And your response for government speed was great, so we wanted to let you know that.
Well, thank you.
Any other? Commissioner Kelly?
Doug, back in the mid-'90s, I think you'll remember we banned alcohol at Falls Park, and that was a dramatic change down there, and I applaud you guys for looking at Tower Park and Van Epps.
Yeah, we did a similar thing at Heritage Park, which is at 6th and Weber. We had basically the same problem that we have here today, and now there's playground equipment there, and people go and use that with their families and kids. So, again, I know we're just relocating some of the issues, but it's quite obvious that having large groups and alcohol at this park is not a good combination.
Yeah. It would be nice if we could find a place that they could be that maybe wasn't, I hate to say so visible, because being visible was maybe a good thing too, because we're keeping an eye on them. But you're right, they're going to relocate. I don't want them down on the bike trails.
Yeah,
I don't want them in somebody's back alley.
We do hear a lot of great comments now about people on the bike trails and the River Greenway, how we've cleaned that up and moved some of those folks on. But yeah, I don't have the perfect solution, but it's nowhere to the point where it's beyond control and where we don't have a handle on it. But I think it's good that we're being proactive and stay in front of it.
Yeah. Any other comments, Commissioner Barth?
Well, I guess I would concur on the thanks for the fence. That's very appreciated. I would say that it seems like it'd be nice if we could be more nimble about changing the rules on the park. October is, 3 months or whatever. I don't know what needs to be changed in the statute or city ordinance, but it seems like it ought to be a lot simpler than to wait that long. And I know that's certainly not your purview, but I'd also like to just comment that I've been a long-time advocate of raising the cost of alcohol and using some of those funds to treat the issues that cause these problems, whether it's mental health or substance addiction, abuse. And, all of this is part of the cost of alcohol. And we continue to subsidize its consumption and encourage it. If a can of beer cost $1 more, maybe people would only drink a 3-pack. Anyway, I know the city is working hard on this. I appreciate your efforts, and I think that our workers here at the county can feel a little better having that fence go in. Again, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else?
Well, I appreciate Commissioner Barr's comments, and I also think that we have to remember that it is, in fact, legal to drink in this country. You can actually open up a can of beer, open a bottle of wine, and have a nice glass of alcohol, whatever your pleasure is. However, with that being said, the real issue, and I think what really came up, is the fact that we need the fence primarily because our employees are going over there and they're having some problems with feeling secure and safe. And so I think the fence goes a long way to resolve that. And so thank you for your active stance. We're not going to solve any sort of regulatory problem or any sort of alcohol problem here today. So thank you for your comments, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I think we're
Thanks,
done.
Commissioner.
Thank you. All right.
Anyone else?
Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to regular business.
Regular business, item 10, is to authorize the chairman to sign Minnehaha County Jail per diem contracts with the counties of Aurora, Brookings, Dual, Gregory, Hanson, Hutchinson, Hyde, Kingsbury, Lake, McCook, Moody, Sanborn, and Turner. Jeff Gromer.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jeff Gromer. I'm warden at the jail. These are just basic renewals of the housing contracts that we currently have in place with the 13 counties that have elected to contract with us. There is only one minor change to the contract, and that's just the daily rate is being increased by $1. So the new rate is $81.20.
Any questions?
But on the work release, the participant has to pay too, is that correct?
That's correct. That rate has not changed.
So the 35, but it's supplemented by what they pay, what, $25 a day or whatever?
The whole rate is paid by the participant. It's up to
the $35 is? Okay.
Yes,
okay.
and it's up to the individual contracting county as to whether or not the county pays for that or the inmate, the participant pays for that. I'll tell you, across the board, the participant pays.
When you have an out-county, do you have an out-county guy in here on work release then or not?
Yes.
You do? And
Yeah.
that county doesn't pay anything then?
The participant pays the rate then.
Any other questions? Look for a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to authorize the county to sign the per diem for the jail contracts. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Item 11 is to authorize the chairman to sign guaranteed jail bed per diem contract between Minnehaha and Lincoln County. Jeff Gomer.
Same general renewal of the contract. Lincoln County has a slightly different arrangement than the other contracted counties. Lincoln County is guaranteed at a minimum 12 beds. For that guarantee, they pay on a quarterly basis as opposed to a daily bed rate. So the daily bed rate is slightly reduced, but we do have the quarterly payment. Again, the increase was simply $1 per day, which changes obviously the quarterly payment as well as the daily rate for any inmates over the 12.
Any questions on this contract? Commissioner?
I don't have any questions. I just would reiterate the fact that these will all be reviewed in the process of putting together financial interest, if you will, in whatever happens with expanding facilities that we're talking about having to do. So these are only a one-year contract, and by that time we'll have all of those solutions put in place. But there will be one specific committee that will address the financial portion of this discussion. So,
and we have multiple different contracts and rates depending on the agencies that we're holding inmates for.
Any other questions? Look for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the per diem with Lincoln County. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Item 12 is a briefing on the activities and events of the 75th Annual Sioux Empire Fair at the W.H. Lyon Fairgrounds. Scott Wick.
Good morning, Scott Wick, Sioux Empire Fair. Would like to start off, and on behalf of the board, myself, and the staff, thank you for your continued investment in the fairgrounds and support. Just want to touch on a quick event we had 2 weeks ago. We had almost 1,000 teams of the National Team Penners Association in the expo building, and the improvements and the investment in the air circulation system and the lights and the doors were duly noted. And those folks travel all over the country, and to get that good PR from them will hopefully bring in more events. So we thank you for that. 75th Annual Sioux Empire Fair kicks off Friday, August 1st. We have some activities in the morning that start off with ribbon cuttings at 11, 11:15, and 11:30, where we will celebrate the 75th anniversary, some improvements to Pioneer Lane, and then we'll have the Pipestone Discovery Barn will be the last ribbon cutting. So you're all invited to that. I dropped off passes and VIP parking passes in the office earlier. There's also schedules in there that I dropped off this morning. Our small schedule that's all folded up is not done being printed yet. We have a lot of great activities going on to celebrate the 75th. Friday night we have anniversary cake that starts at 6 o'clock for the first 2,000 people. Friday night is free admission. We do have Johnny Home Band is in the beer garden that night. All the food vendors will be up and running, and all the rides will be up and running Friday night. And then, as you'll see in the schedule from Saturday on, is just jam-packed with things to do. The weather forecast was good. We're looking at mild temperatures and hopefully dry, so we're looking for a good 75th anniversary fair. Any questions?
Commissioner Barth?
Well, I think you might be wrong about the weather. I think it's not going to be good. I think it's going to be great. And,
All right. I like that better.
I think I plan to be there every day. I'll probably only make it 9 out of 10. But I'm honored to be wearing a shirt from this year's fair right now, and I might even be down there later today looking at stuff. What's the status of our new Pipestone building? They're still banging on it, I see.
They say it will be done, and Sylvia, I do believe that with Sylvia in charge of that, it's going to happen. Yeah, they're working 24/7. She's had a tool belt on, spent some weekends working on it. They're painting it. Merle and Roy came out and paved, so it will be ready to go. There might be some things drying close to 5 o'clock, little noise in the background during the ribbon cutting, but it'll be ready.
Yep. We're going to have a lot of exciting things out at that barn. So.
Yeah, all kinds of demonstrations. There'll be the pigs that give birth, cows give birth, chicks that hatch, the dairy demonstrations and the milking parlor. So it's all education from the time you walk through that grain bin and how many bushels are in there, to how many people that'll feed, how many acres in South Dakota it took to put in that bin. It's 100% educational as you go through the entire building. So it's just a great fit to go along with why the Lyon family donated that land to the county.
Anything else? Thank you. We'll see you out there.
All right.
Item 13 is to authorize the chairman to sign election services agreement between Minnehaha County and Election Systems and Software, LLC. Bob Litz.
Good morning, Commissioners. Bob Litz from the Auditor's Office. And today I'd like to bring to your attention a contract for potential election services, Minnehaha County. The Minnehaha County Elections Department would like to propose the hiring of outside election services. They would be provided by a company called C-Change, which is the former eSynergy. This company has been an integral part of ES&S for a long time. The proposed contract centers around 4 areas of service. First one would be ballot printing, and we would work with Total Vote on producing the ballot styles and numbers. This would cut out an extra step and reduce our chances for errors. The cost for producing the ballots for the next election would be an estimated $27,000, which is close to what it costs us to produce the ballots ourselves. Second step would be election night reporting. This will help us tally and distribute the results and data quicker than we've been able to in the past. Third area would be programming of the auto marks, and the auto marks in case you're not familiar with it, are the voter assistance machines. If you have a number of disabilities, they would assist you in doing that. We're required to put them out for federal elections, but along with that goes the programming of the automarks. We currently do this in-house with the election chips. It's complex, and sea change would offer us other languages should it get to that in the future. Number 4 would be the programming of the ballot tabulation machines. We currently do this in-house, and it takes a lot of staff time. The election process is changing. We will soon not have the capacity to keep programming the needs of our future elections with what we have in-house. Our county is the only one in the state that still does our own programming. The entire rest of the state uses the proposed services. It will eliminate some of our risk areas and minimize the potential for mistakes. The estimated cost for the next election services, if we do these, is about $5,388.10. We believe at this point we can cover those elections expenses within our election budget. We're requesting approval of the contract so the auditor's office can sign off on the matter, and then we'll begin this portion of the November 4th, 2014 general election.
Any questions for Bob? Commissioner Barth?
Bob, it talks in the contract about exclusive service provider. We agreed to purchase the products and services only from these people. Is that an issue at all?
I think, we can do it for 1 year or 3 years like the contract says, but I think that to get that continuity going for elections, it would behoove us to go ahead for the 3 years. And, I did run this contract by Kirsten, and we had a few changes on it, and I don't know if the State's Attorney's Office has any comments on it.
Well, I'll note, too, that the 3-year requirement is just to guarantee the prices that are within. It's not technically a breach if you don't use them for 3 years, but to get the best rate, it is a 3-year commitment as it reads right now. That certainly is up to your discretion, but that's what the contract represents.
I think the truth is we'd have to search far and wide to find somebody to do the comparable services for that price.
Any other questions? Look for a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the signing of the contract for elections, systems, and software. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Item 14 is briefing on repair activities on county highway systems following the state disaster declaration. DJ Boothie.
Morning, Commissioners. DJ Boothie, Highway Superintendent. The Highway Department has been working with the South Dakota Department of Transportation and FEMA and Lynn's office in response to the flooding that we had in June and the subsequent disaster declaration by Governor Dugard. And I'm told by Lynn that last night the presidential declaration was finalized, so we'll be moving forward with that one also. There's two different declarations, the state and the federal. The DOT is coordinating the effort of the state's ER program. Disaster assessment is scheduled for next week, starting next week. We've been in contact with them several times and have a lengthy list of projects that we're going to be requesting to be completed with that declaration. Work is to be completed within 180 days of that June 13th disaster start date. And so we'll try to work to make sure that all of it is done within that time frame to receive what should be 100% reimbursement for that work. The FEMA declaration, I think that should be a 75 to 85% reimbursement for the work that falls within the FEMA reimbursement guidelines. We'll be scheduling a kickoff meeting with Lynn in the next couple of weeks to get that ball rolling. And the projects, we have a lot of projects that will qualify for the reimbursement, but for the most part, Lynn will be coordinating, it sounds like, with FEMA to make sure that the reimbursements occur as they should. The Highway Department itself, our staff did a lot of work up front in order to make sure that all of our roads remained or were open shortly after the flooding happened in June, and they did a great job working on a number of closures that happened over the first couple nights. We still have one bridge that's on a township road that is closed. That roadway is closed by the township. The bridge is closed by us, and there's probably $50,000 worth of work that needs to be done on the bridge before that is opened back up. We're currently negotiating with an engineering consultant to help put together some some plans and some specifications and some construction admin services for a professional engineering contract to help with the disaster response. And we are hopefully today sending out requests for quotations for the first contract that would be contracted with a contractor to actually redo the grading on La Mesa that we had finished right before the flooding happened. A lot of the stuff that we had done as our own crews got washed out with those events. And so the idea is that we'll hire a contractor, have that contractor replace what we had done, and then our crews will go in there and complete the paving. School is approaching very quickly. I think 3 weeks from yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, it's the first day of school, and so we're going to be in there at the 11th hour paving, but right now our schedule shows us to actually get it done right before school gets started. Do you guys have any questions right now? If not, I think Lynn might have a couple of things that he wants to add, or if there's any questions about the highway department stuff, I can answer them now.
Commissioner Barth?
DJ, I don't know if it's better to ask you or Lynn, but some of the FEMA money depends on projects being completed within a certain time limit, like 6 months.
Correct.
And we do have limits on our construction season in South Dakota. Do you see any of that, our projects that we're going to have to do, as being impacted by that time constraint?
We are going to have to complete some of our projects very quickly before the completion date. The completion date falls in December, so that's difficult. I don't know if FEMA has any provisions for winter completion dates to go continue into the spring, but we're going to try to get ours done prior to. We don't have a lot of work that's going to be really limited too much by cold weather. We can pour concrete if we need to in the cold weather. We don't have a lot of asphalt work, for example, that needs to be done on the FEMA projects, and so we won't be limited there.
Great.
Okay. Any other questions for DJ? Okay. Guess we look for Lynn.
Commissioners, Lindy Young, Emergency Management. I didn't have anything written up for you, obviously, because we didn't know when the presidential process was going to come through. We were notified a couple different ways late last night and everything. But as DJ indicates, we'll be working with not only the county and the documentation process, but also the townships. We've gotten several calls from them over the last couple days. And from the time the disaster declaration signed by the president and until things get going, there's about a 48-hour window where FEMA has an opportunity to move into the city, and then over the next couple of weeks, they'll be doing some of the other work. And it's not just Minnehaha County, but it's I think 11 counties and in and across the state of South Dakota. So we'll be working with those townships and other communities to move through the process over here in the next couple of months. So be willing to ask and answer any questions.
Commissioner Peckus?
Well, once again, you guys have already been working on this and championing this for the last month. FEMA's just now getting around to rolling around to getting the ball rolling. Once again, it just goes to say that your best response is your local response. So thank you for all the work that you're doing, and it's good to see the federal government finally playing catch-up.
Any other comments? Okay. Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Item 15 is to authorize the chairman to sign the JABG subgrant notice of award, special conditions, assurances, and certifications for RFP number FFY 2012-2013 JABG-01 for the LSS Diversion Officer Grant. Ken McFarland.
Commissioners, you will recall back on June 3rd, you authorized the submission of a grant application to the Department of Corrections for what will be the final year of the grant associated with the middle school diversion officer. This is actually 2 grant periods that they are combining into one. They were only going to allocate approximately $20,000 for each of the 2 remaining years, and they decided to combine those 2 years into one so that we'd probably get more bang for the buck. And so what we're proposing is to continue the services of the Lutheran Social Services Middle School Diversion Officer Program. It'll likely be restructured a little bit because of the reduced number of hours, but we think that this is probably the best expenditure of those grant dollars. What you have before you then is the authorization for the chairman to sign the notice of the award. that we received, and then I, as project chairman for this particular grant, will sign off on a number of other documents required acknowledging the reimbursement process and submitting some insurance and EEO documents that are required as part of the grant. So again, this will be the last grant year for this particular program, which has been going on for quite a few years with the county. So with that in mind, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Commissioner Kelly.
Ken, what's going to happen at the end of this grant? Now, this person is a LSS employee, correct?
They are.
But next year, we're going to have to consider going this on our own. Is that correct? Is that...
Well, the JDAI committee this is a topic of conversation that they will have to have as far as, does this make sense to continue this program under some other capacity? So those are still decisions that have not yet been made in that, but we were committed to at least providing and accessing this final year of those grant dollars. So that's still a question that we need to resolve within the committee structure.
Are they going to be able to provide any empirical evidence of how this program has succeeded or what it's done?
Yeah, and that's part, one of the requirements of the grant is quarterly reporting that has to go to DOC regarding, the numbers of kids, the recidivism rate, and those documents have been...
Do you see that at the JDAI level? Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Benega.
I'll just make a comment. I think we already know that there's been success in the program from the fact that a number of years ago, before I started anyhow, this process, there was discussion about building a secured 100-bed facility, and now we're down to talking about remodeling a secured facility for 1/3 that number of participants. So obviously there's already been success in the conversations, regardless of who takes credit for it, that the bottom line is the outcomes have been extremely positive.
I think the outcomes are the JDAI, and it isn't necessarily resource officers in the school, and that's why JDAI will be looking at this to see what the data shows. There has been some research that maybe resource officers in the school isn't the best solution, but we will be looking locally for data, and whether it's the county that, through JDAI is funding this type of thing, or whether it's a school district issue, or whether it's a city issue, there's a lot of questions to be answered. It is sad it's going away. This has always been grant funded, and now it will no longer be. But I think we see that in a lot of different areas of the county where grant funding is disappearing, and we need to figure out what programs are really necessary and how to go forward.
And that's how we've been successful at JDAI right now. A lot of the programs that we've started off as grant programs, and we've been able, because of our reduction in numbers that we've seen in secure detention, to roll those in to our existing funds ballot or our existing resources that we have, and just simply reallocating them from secure side to some of the alternatives that we've developed. So
putting that money to the best use, and that's what we've done. So,
I do think what you're doing there, looking at, say, the school district, we need to look at other partners when these, we can be the focus for the grant initially, but when it comes to funding it ourselves, and not only this, but a lot of these programs, we need to look at who else is affected by it. And
we do have a school board, or we do have school board members on some of our committees, and we also have representatives from the city of Sioux Falls who's looking at different areas that we've been working on. So yes, we do have outside agencies and partners. Commissioner Barth?
So Ken, is this basically a renewal of existing stuff, so the bureaucratic boilerplate that's associated with this contract is the same as previous, and so there's no additional demands on you or the auditor's office to make sure?
There is not.
Okay.
They actually shortened up a year for us, and so instead of trying to administer 2 smaller grants, now we have one pot of money and a larger grant that we can administer, and so no, this is not causing us any additional burden than what we're already doing.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I'd look for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to authorize the chairman to sign the J-BIG grant. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Item 16 is consider a motion to adopt the FY 2015 provisional budget for Minnehaha County. Ken McFarland.
Well, it's been a long summer, and then you folks have spent a lot of hours crafting this particular budget, and today is the day by state law that we need to adopt a provisional budget. Right now, the FY 2015 county provisional budget stands at $72,141,845, and this is an increase over the current adopted budget of 2014 of $68,791,522. This particular budget is supported by what we would see, based on past years, as a sluggish 2.4% growth in property taxes due to new construction, and a 1.4% adjustment allowed by the state for the CPI under the property tax limitation statutes. We have some very modest increases that we are seeing in some of our non-property tax revenue, such as the bank franchise tax, some recording fees, and vehicle registration fees. And importantly, a big part of this growth is actually an increase in the highway budget, which is a separate fund, and we're including that within the total, and your desire to accelerate some of our building projects by spending down some of the cash and that in that highway fund. So the general fund is actually where some of our other major expenditures are, and that is really constrained by, of course, the property tax limitation. This particular budget includes one new court records officer position in the jail, and that, as you are well aware of, because of the property tax limitation, you were unable to fund the request for new positions that you saw coming from the Sheriff's Department, the State's Attorney, the Public Defender, the Public Advocate, even the Highway Department, Equalization, Planning and Zoning, etc. That are the one thing that, if I have to characterize this budget, is that basically what this budget does is keep the county operations pretty much on par with the 2014 budget, in that with little or no growth to fund any requests for new positions, equipment, programs, or demands that we are seeing based on our growing community. So the property tax limitation as it's structured right now, basically, if I had to characterize it, keeps our head above water. But it doesn't allow us to expand and meet the demands that we are seeing in our departments. Right now, a public hearing is on the proposed budget, will be held on Tuesday, September 2nd at 9:15, and I will remind you the final budget must be adopted by September 30th. And that you have indicated, some of you, that there is a desire that we will have perhaps another budget meeting or two to make some final adjustments on the provisional. And the other thing that this budget does, it does also take into account and funds the normal increases that we would see in payroll for our employees and implementation of a modification in our pay plan. So with that in mind, the issue before you today is the motion to adopt the provisional budget, and if you adopt it as it is, we have a press release that will go out later this morning.
Are there any questions for Ken? I still have one issue that I have some heartburn with, and I will just throw it out here, and you guys can think about it for the next month if you would like, and that is that we're taking 2 sheriff cars away, and we're putting 2 new vehicles in equalization. I still think we should give the sheriff back one of those cars, and we should be using a surplus highway pickup for equalization. You don't have to do anything about it today if you don't want to, but I think you should think about it. I think that a sheriff car running down the road every single day is extremely important, and I think that we need to revisit that particular issue. So, Commissioner Barth?
Well, I find that an interesting comment, and I'm not in total disagreement. But I would say that my fellow commissioners have worked very hard on this budget, and in fact, what we are doing, though, whether it's not, it may not be clear to our citizens, but in effect, our services to the citizens are being reduced. We have chosen not to opt out for operations purposes. As Ken has pointed out, that the purpose of the opt-out truly was for major projects and not for hand-to-mouth operations. But services are being reduced, and it's an incremental thing that may not affect you as you stand in the treasurer's line today, but it may affect you as you await an attorney while you're currently locked up in jail. It may affect you when you're waiting for planning and zoning to assess your complaint about a neighbor. It may affect you when you attempt to vote and find some changes have gone on. It may affect you when you ask for a reassessment of your property valuation. It may affect you when you wait for a sheriff's deputy to respond to your 911 call. But for the vast majority of people, they won't see it at all. But there is, in effect, an incremental reduction in services to the people of our county because our current funding formula, as you have stated correctly, Commissioner Heiberger, it's not that we're not collecting enough taxes, but the county is not getting enough of a share of those taxes. Other bodies in the state who are running surpluses are able to beat their chests and claim that their budget process is superior. They didn't show up for these meetings, and they're sitting on piles of cash. Anyway, I could go on, but let's raise the tax on alcohol soon.
I'm just going to reiterate kind of what Jeff said, and that is, and I don't think we need to raise the alcohol tax if we just redistribute the amount of taxes that are already collected in the state of South Dakota. There's plenty of taxes collected to make counties run efficiently. It's a distribution problem, and I don't think anybody is brave enough to tackle this, and that's a problem. Any other comments?
Well, I believe also on that subject you're talking that the city, one of their resolutions to the legislature is going to be to oppose any change in distribution. Am I correct on that, Ken?
As I understand the resolutions that the city has adopted is to oppose anything that would take away some of their current funding streams, whether it comes from sales tax, alcohol tax, or other kind of things. I'm not so sure that they would oppose a redistribution, let's say, of the state portion of the alcohol tax counties, but things that impact their revenue sources, as I read their resolutions, that would indicate that they would be opposed to anything that would take away from their sources, or to even, as I understand it, expand that ability, like a county sales tax to the counties. So,
Any other questions or comments on this provisional budget?
I just want to, a lot of people don't see this, Annette, but I'm at all the hearings that I do, and you folks put in a lot of work on this budget, not only when you're sitting here at the table, but I know the work that you put in at home when you're reviewing this, and you are coming to these hearings pretty well prepared to make decisions, and you know that because it's evident that you've read it and that while you've been at home. So you made some tough decisions this year, and again, people should know the amount of work that you actually put into this effort.
So you're saying we don't just pass it and read it later?
Correct.
Commissioner Peckus?
This commission doesn't have fear about raising property taxes. We've done it before, but when you look at the business case that was presented this year by our department heads, they made a very compelling business case. But in this particular instance, we were able to shift a lot of the funds around to go ahead and actually have a budget that we could all agree upon. And so it's going to be a challenge next year. It's always a challenge moving forward. One item of concern that I had is I was just driving down Minnesota Avenue and I saw the old land title building at 22nd and Minnesota Avenue was finally occupied. It was moved off the tax rolls. A nice $1 million plus building moved off the tax rolls, bought by Sanford. They moved in their marketing department. And so, as vast tracts of Sioux Falls moves off the tax rolls, it's going to be more and more for a struggle for Minnehaha County to make up that cost. And that's a real issue. I'm going to talk about it a little bit in our next
Unless the legislature gets brave and solves the county's funding problems, we will have to continue to opt out on property taxes, which is hurting individual people who can hardly afford to pay for their property the way it is. Are we ready to adopt the budget? Provisional budget.
I'll make the motion. Second.
A motion and a second to adopt the provisional budget as written. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, Ken, we can go on to resolutions.
Item 17, consider the following resolutions for submission to the South Dakota Association of County Commissioners for legislative action. Ken McFarland.
Commissioners, as you know, the bylaws of the South Dakota Association of County Commissioners require that if you want to submit resolutions for consideration at the annual convention to be included in the legislative platform of the association, those resolutions must be forwarded to the state office not later than August 1, and that this allows plenty of time for those resolutions to be reviewed by the SDACC Resolutions Committee prior to the convention that will happen on September, I believe, 15, 16, and 17 of this year. You will recall on July 8th, we came to this commission to explain that process to you and to begin the process of identifying resolutions that you may want to submit for consideration. And that, based on the discussions at that meeting and the subsequent discussions I've had with some of you, we developed the following list of resolutions for you for consideration today. Now, you certainly don't have to. You may want to consider submitting all of them, some of them, or even none of them. But that's what this process is, because we need to have a formal adopted resolution before we can submit it to the SDACC. I've broken these resolutions really down into a couple different categories. The first three actually deal with ideas or difficulties, as it may be, that you've had with the property tax limitation statute as it's written. The first resolution would simply repeal the tax limit, the property tax limitation for counties, and just say it's not applicable anymore. The second one would allow for a one-time adjustment to county mill levies, and then you would jump back into the property tax limitation. I'm not sure really what impact that one would have beyond what you can already do with an opt-out. But it was one that people wanted to discuss. And then the other one was one that we had talked about last year and had tried unsuccessfully to get passed in the legislature, was to change the property tax limitation statutes from 3% or the CPI, whichever is less, to 3% the CPI, whichever is greater. So that one is back for your consideration. Alcohol tax has also gotten some discussion, and we again brought it up today. The first resolution concerning alcohol tax was that this would provide for a 10% increase in the sales tax for alcoholic beverages, with the counties getting a portion of those revenues. The last time we took a look at that, we had estimated, and I gave you a spreadsheet about what that potentially could raise for Minnehaha County, and based on the distribution formula that's being proposed, that could potentially raise $3.4 million for counties to be used for county budgeting purposes. And that would, like I said, that's a 10% increase on the existing sales tax on alcoholic beverages. The other one would be simply to provide for a redistribution of the current tax on alcoholic beverages that's in place. As you know, the state gets 75% of those revenues and municipalities get 25%. This resolution would say, state of South Dakota, you need to pony up half of that 75% and bring it to the counties. Presently, that would bring to the counties statewide a little over $5 million. I think about $10.6 million is collected by the state, is the state share of that tax right now. The other three are, the other four resolutions are, or three, are just a different variation. One, and we've talked about this before, is to establish responsibility for costs of prosecution and defense for persons charged with crimes in state correctional facilities. As you know, the state right now will prosecute those crimes, but when an event happens in the state pen or at another facility, it's the county that gets stuck with the cost of the legal defense for those inmates in that facility. And again, it's a situation we have absolutely no control over at all. The other one is, the next one has really gotten kind of a lot of attention lately, and it's about TIFs. And that, as you know, the counties do not have a say in the approval process for a TIF. And that, yet the revenues that are, the county share of revenue is used to fund those TIFs along with the city share of revenue, et cetera. For instance, our current TIFs that are in place right now between Brandon and Sioux Falls diverts almost $300,000 in property tax revenue from the county right now with those current TIFs. And according to the auditor's office, with some of the new TIFs that are coming online, that amount is expected to double next year. Now, as you well know, coming off of budget hearings, fresh out of budget hearings, $600,000 in extra property tax revenue would have gone a long way to helping meet some of the needs in our departments as far as new employees or new equipment, et cetera. And then the last one is an idea to have municipalities share and be required to, whenever they do their city sales tax portion and or gross receipts tax, we call it the bed and booze tax. Whenever they're going to do that they need to negotiate with the counties for a share of that revenue because of the increased activity that those things do. Now, what this resolution does is that if there's going to be an increase in that, then of the current tax, then they need to negotiate. And I know that there's some of you who were saying, no, we're not talking about if they increase it. We would like it to be a share of their existing revenues right now if they have it in place. So that's the background on these particular resolutions. Again, these are resolutions that were gleaned from my conversations with you, each of you, and from what you discussed in the public last on July 8th. So I'm not sure how you would like to tackle these and which ones you want to forward for consideration to the Resolutions Committee. I know Commissioner Kelly is going to be sitting on that committee this year. So have a little bit of an ally in the committee.
I think we should go just one down the road and let's just see what your arguments are and whether we leave them in or throw them out. So the first one is the property tax limitation status to repeal the whole thing.
For counties.
For counties. I don't think it'll work. I think we're best off still sticking with C. I don't know who brought it forward or whose idea, but does anybody want to speak to that?
I really need some input from the commission on this.
Right.
Because it's the first time we've had a representative on resolutions for a long time.
Well, I think we've ridden that horse before, and it's never gotten any further than the barn. And I really don't think that it's going to do us any good to beat it again. I think we're going to have to pick and choose our resolutions pretty carefully. If we choose to do that on our own, that would probably be something we could consider later, but I don't really think that the county association is going to tackle this one.
So let's take it out. I think I detect 3 votes against it here.
Yeah.
Okay. And the next one is a one-time adjustment to the county levies.
I'm the one that brought that one up. That was a couple years ago. I think that at least when I first got elected, they talked about the fact that Minnehaha County lowered their mill levies and the odd chance that would somehow convince the legislature not to impose the property tax limitation. Of course, we lowered ours, and immediately they passed it, so we got locked in at the lowest mill levy rate. The reality is this: if you look at, for example, Pennington County, which locked in at the highest level, they have more money available to do more with a smaller population center.
About 12 million.
Exactly, 12 million more. And you're telling me that that would go a long way to creating a lot more of not only potential social type programs, but also law enforcement. You know, we wouldn't have to cut those cars out of the sheriff's department. But I just think that for the counties that went out there and really tried to work with the legislature that year, we got penalized, and we've been penalized ever since. And, you know, how's that affected people in Minnehaha County? Well, we've had to opt out 5 times. That's what it boiled down to. So,
Commissioner Kelly.
Ken, do you know how many counties are in a position we are versus where they were at the higher mill levy?
I do not. I don't have that specific information.
Is it information we can get, do you think, or not?
It would be difficult to, I would say it would be difficult to screw it down that specifically.
You know, I think Rapid has a seat. I'm not sure. I looked at the thing, but I think Rapid has a seat on the resolutions committee too. Obviously, they wouldn't, from their standpoint, have little interest in this. So, you know, it could be viewed very strongly as a Minnehaha County bill, and that's not been the easiest hill to climb in the past. So.
The sad thing is we're supposed to be working together as an association, but sometimes it comes down to which county do we like and which one gets too much.
That's the reality. That's right.
If I may, I think also that the one-time adjustment might be everyone goes down to Minnehaha County's level.
Yeah,
there you
that
go.
would be.
That'd get their attention.
Yeah. Thoughts on it? Do you want to move that one forward, or do you want to?
I just thought I'd bring it up, but
Yeah.
I have no.
I'm not sure that.
Drive it.
I'm not sure at this point that's doable. I may be wrong, but.
I agree with Dick there. I think it might be too difficult to explain and to enact, so I think we should leave it out. Gerald?
Well, I don't think it's difficult to explain. The equation's not the same for everybody. And if it was kept equal for everybody, it would solve, frankly, most people's issues.
Well, and if I could, I agree with what Commissioner Benega just indicated. I think most South Dakotans would like to know that when you're going in to play, a round of cards, you're going to be playing with a full deck. But when Minnehaha County walks in, they cut the cards out of the deck and said, give yourself a fair hand. And that's not a level playing field. And I think most South Dakotans find that a little bit unfair.
And also, as you move from county to county in South Dakota, not that we all run around and move all the time, but if you move from Minnehaha County to one of the higher property tax, you're like, what happened to my property tax? I just moved in the state of South Dakota, and yet my property tax is sky high.
I've heard that.
What is there's a state mill or not? There's a mill levy max.
There is.
The counties can, and where are we at compared to what that max?
You need to remember, and that as levies are being calculated, you don't get to say that's the one I want.
Right.
And that the mill levy calculation is just merely it's the final step in a mathematical equation that says here's how many dollars you can collect for property taxes versus your valuation.
But that's a result.
Resulting
Yeah,
mill levy.
that's a result of the property tax limitation deal.
Well, not really, because that's the way it's always been. I mean, the actual mill levy that's applied is strictly tied to how many property tax dollars do you need to collect. And since the property tax limitation's in place, those tax dollars are set. Here is the amount. And that's why you have restrictions and why you can't, get new taxes based on reappraisal growth and all of that stuff. And so it's set by a finite number that you can collect, just simply divided by your valuation to get the levy it's going to require to get that.
But taking out the limitation, there is a not to exceed number, right?
There is, and that to get back to your question, I think the statutory limit for counties in the general fund is 12 mills, and that we're below, we're right at 3 So, I mean, we got there's a lot of capacity there. I mean, if we could charge 12 mills, we would never be having any of these conversations, but that's not doable.
Sorry, Commissioner Benega.
You're kind of like the rest of us. You always look to the left.
Well, I'm trying. Sit like this.
I thought I was still left.
I'm wondering if Kyle has some information about his conversation last week about the ag values, and then if you have any clue about mill levies in the rest of the counties.
Going the wrong way.
Just in your office, huh?
That wouldn't be any fun. Kyle Helseth, the Equalization Office. After the meeting last week with agricultural, it looks like Minnehaha County's finally met its maximum value for ag properties. Good news, bad news. The other news is that they want to go to productivity. There's a strong push within the legislature to go to an actual productivity valuation. We're ahead of the curve on that in that we have pictometry in place and a lot of things going on. The mill levies around the state, having worked with the Department of Revenue, it's like somebody took a shotgun and shot at the state. Pennington County at that time went as high as they could go. Minnehaha County went as low as they could go. Most of the other counties just stayed where they were at.
Where does Pennington County's at?
Off the top of my head, I'd hate...
Okay.
Yeah, I'd get a few phone calls from some friends out in Pennington County saying I was wrong.
Okay.
They took advantage of the system at that point. And I say that with all sincerity. They even admitted that they knew what was going to happen. $1,000 worth of value in every county is so totally different as far as the taxes they pay that sometimes is very scary. And it's all dependent on the state aid formula. Minnehaha County gets approximately 44% of the taxes back, where by legislation we're supposed to get 51 to 54% of the state aid education. That's all based on how rich your county is. And Minnehaha County is the richest in the state. So they cut our state aid value, our state aid monies back. That affects our taxes more than any of the counties. But as a percentage of the income, Minnehaha County is probably one of the higher when it comes to property taxes as far as percentage of their taxes that are paid to the county. That's 17%. The cities are lowest at 13%, and then the school gets the other 70%. The only reason the cities are lowest is that they have other funding mechanisms that are out there. If you just went strictly and they had to dedicate all of those monies collected to property tax, they'd probably be up close to 20%, which would put us down at the bottom again. But as far as what everybody else pays, I can find out relatively quick, but off the top of my head, boy, I'm getting in a lot of trouble. Too many people watch this that it's scary.
Commissioner Benega.
Kyle, thanks for the information, but I think if you're going to be successful in ever convincing the legislature to change the equation or change the formula, you got to give them black and white numbers. They're not going to react to anything that's fuzzy or an opinion. I'm wondering if that's not an important piece of us trying to at least move something forward to make it equitable. And right now, from what you've been telling us, I don't think it is equitable.
It isn't. Absolutely not. And I guess one word of not warning, but a little caveat out there, the legislature right now is really not depending on the Department of Revenue for a lot of numbers.
Right.
There's a lot of mistrust going on. A lot of reorganization taking place with the new LRC director, with the Department of Revenue losing a lot of its key personnel. That was very evident last week, Tuesday, in what they were doing. We have a good resource out there who understands a lot of the county's problems, and that's Representative Mickelson, who really does have a good handle on what's happening, so he may be a good contact person.
Well, I still feel that we have to have some sort of document that talks about issues, and I agree you don't want to be guessing at those, but I think we need to start the process to figure that out, frankly.
Ken.
And, you know, one of the issues, at least with this particular one, that I can anticipate, if you're doing a one-time adjustment, they're going to get right back, well, we let you do that. It's called the opt-out. If you want to pick a number that you think is going to get you fair, opt out, and then you restart the property tax limitation. And that's the biggest drawback on this one that I see, simply is they're going to say, we already let you do that. It's called an opt-out. Just do it. And you can do it for any amount that you want to get you to that level. That still, again, is not a systematic approach to try to resolve some system inequities that we are positive that exist out there. And we know that.
Okay, my last comment would be, is what we've tried in the past, has it worked?
No.
So why the heck are we going down the same road?
Oh, I'm not disagreeing with you.
I mean, we're just shooting ourselves in the foot and then saying, well, maybe it'll work this year, but it hasn't worked for 10 years in a row. That's kind of like, it does not make sense not to have black and white numbers.
Commissioner Kelly.
Minnehaha County had a reason for what they did back when the limitation came on, and it was probably to keep taxes lower here, keep taxes as low as we could, and within a reasonable budget. I don't think it does us any good to say, well, Rapid City's got a higher mill levy, because they do, they had a higher basis to work from. Irregardless, it's our problem now is funding our current problems, and probably most of it's in the public safety side of it. So I think that's a place we have to look at stronger, and the alcohol tax is one of them. Look at that more than trying to get first the resolutions and then the membership of SDACC and then the legislature to allow us to go up some arbitrary number. And you're right, Gerald. It hasn't worked in the past, and I don't think there's any new approaches to make it work this time.
Everybody keeps talking about, back in the day and when that happened. Well, here's how that all shook out. I mean, just for historical context, that was the time period when they were enacting the property tax limitation and the discussion was going on. And one of the key sources of revenue that the state took from the counties in order to start this whole process, to start the fund balance for the school aid formula dollars and the property tax relief program that they were trying to do. The state took a little over $16 million from counties in the form of the personal property replacement tax in order to fund that new state program to do it. Our share at the time, if I'm remembering correctly, was somewhere around that $700,000 to $800,000 share. We anticipated that legislation, we knew they were going to take that away. We had a pretty good idea that they were. So what we did is we adjusted our budget to take that revenue out. And we built it in prior to the enactment of the limitation. A lot of counties didn't do that. And so when the legislature rolled around and they had to, to account for this loss of revenue, then they gave the counties kind of like a one-time gimme, as I recall, to put it back in their budgets. To say, all right, well, we're adjusting the limitation formula to account for this loss of revenue. That's how that started.
And we opted not to put it back.
We took it out prior. We saw it coming. We adjusted the budget to reflect that loss prior to the enactment of the statutes. So.
Well, we're still on the property tax. I think if we're going to do a property tax one, we should maybe pick between B and C, because I don't know that it does good to hammer on two of them. I think that my only thought is why we should do C is because we've already hammered on that last year. I think we got a toehold on that one, and if we continue to add more data, like Gerald suggested, I think we might get a little bit farther. We actually had sympathetic people last year in the legislature listening to us more than we ever have before. And so I kind of hate to change directions when we've already had a direction started, but I think we need to have more information, and we need to do more visits with legislators and say, this is what's going on, these are the hard and fast numbers, and this is why it is what it is.
Yeah, once again, I'll go back to item B. It was my idea to begin with, but if you want to move forward with the clear message that we sent on number C, I'm happy to set B aside.
One of the problems with what we took in last year was that they threw it at appropriations, which kind of indicated early on that they wanted to kill it. And that's a logistics problem that's got to be solved by people in Pierre to make sure that gets into the right committee and stays out of appropriations, because I don't think it's really their venue, but that's up to the president and the speaker.
I think we can move on. It's obvious that not everybody agrees on that one, but I still think that if we're going to have any success in the future, and this isn't just a next year's problem, this is a problem forever. So I think we have to look at the scope of our thinking in this process, but I think we need the information on the mill levies. We can put it on hold for a while and then go to C and see if that's acceptable. But again, you're going to have black and white numbers. You're not going to get by with the fuzzy what ifs.
All right, D and E, one is an increase and one is a redistribution. So I think we can probably talk about them together. What are the merits of one or the other, redistribution or an increase in this alcohol beverage taxes?
Who brought in the redistribution idea?
Yes.
Huh?
I think you did.
I did?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I guess I wasn't. I don't remember, though, that I was saying we ought to get half of the state 75.
And this is, something that, again, we have tried before with the legislature to try to get a redistribution of this actual tax. So, like I said, this is estimated, this alcohol tax statewide brings in approximately $10.9 million to the state, and that our share, if we would split it by half, would generate approximately $5 million to be split amongst counties statewide.
Madam Chair, I remember distinctly when this was brought up, and it was our fellow counties that killed it off. Specifically, I remember being on a conference call where Commissioner Ralph Kraft of Bennett County, whose claim to fame is, of course, contemplating bankruptcy, he said that this was not fair because the plan, as we envisioned it, would only give Bennett County $30,000, whereas Minnehaha County would get $600,000. And so I think it's a fine idea. On the other hand, I think that the two together gives us a choice for the next level of discussion here when we bring it to the resolutions committee, when we bring it to the committee of the whole in our state convention. I think, okay, if you don't like this one, what about this one? And I think that's the strategy we go with.
Okay.
Well,
any thoughts on that?
The only concern I have is, did I hear you say we were going to look to half of the 75, 37.5%?
This is how this resolution is
But you could
structured.
renegotiate
that's
that.
a number that I'm concerned about, because I think you'd have second floor up there just beating the dickens out of this thing. So
you could come up with something different if you took it to the resolutions committee.
yeah, all right. But the concept of it is...
That is the concept, is to take half of the state share, which would be about $5.4 million.
But we got to submit these by Friday, right?
Yes.
So how are we going to read it? Are we going to read it as the half or
Unless you amend it, and that's how it's written.
You can always change it when you get there and amend it.
Okay,
I
I'm
will
just asking
remind
what we're going to take up. Because
I will remind you, that's what happened on our last year on one of our property tax limitation resolutions. We took it to the state, and then in the resolutions committee amended it in committee, and the amended version is what went to the floor, for consideration. So the resolutions committee does that all the time.
Okay. Want to leave them both in? Go on to the next one. Is for prosecution
All right.
costs.
Just so that I understand, and that because I want to make sure that I'm submitting the right ones, because you need to sign off on these, and that, so I think you're going to have to take a vote because I need that for the minutes.
Okay.
Is that I need the minutes and a copy of the signed resolutions showing that this board voted to approve those resolutions. That's part of the documentation to submit. So,
Okay.
So I'm not sure where you ended up on the property tax limitation one, whether or not we're doing C or not, and these two, but I think you need a specific vote on them in order to move forward.
Okay. So does somebody want to make a motion on the first? We've gone through E, so you can make a motion to include whatever A, B, C, D, or E, or all, or none, or what do you want?
Madam Chair, I would make a motion to send on C, D, and E.
Is there a second or an amended motion, or?
I'm going to stay out of this. 'Cause
I have a motion for C, D, and E to go on to...
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second for C, D, and E. Are there any other comments on those? This is as far as we are. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passed unanimously. Okay, we're that far. E is the established responsibility for costs of prosecution and defense for persons charged with crimes in the state's correction facility. We have talked about this one. Does anybody have any comment about this? Commissioner Peckus.
Well, we've been burdened. Maybe I should rephrase that. We benefited from having a very competent public defender's office that has been able to step up and defend everybody charged with crimes out of the state penitentiary. Our prosecutor's office, state's attorney's office, at one time was burdened with the charge of prosecuting those offenses that occurred up at the penitentiary, even though they're in state DOC custody, because it was committed within the confines of Minnehaha County. It was our office's responsibility to go ahead and prosecute those. That was changed. They actually recognized several years ago that the burden of bringing those types of prosecutions would be better brought on with the establishment of the Attorney General's office down here in Sioux Falls. And they've championed a lot of those prosecutions with a very good trial team. And they have their own group down here in Sioux Falls from Pierre with the Attorney General's office. Now, the reality is that Minnehaha County is still paying for the defense of people charged with crimes out of the penitentiary. That may or may not be significant if you're talking about somebody that just is sliming a guard or something like that. Those are prosecutions that, of course, are significant, but, you know, there's a reality to the cost that is not going to be crushing. Okay, but if we were to fast forward and think about that burden, think about the cost of doing 2 death penalty cases out of the penitentiary, and that we're paying for that. And so, you know, all things being equal, it'd be nice to have our partner, the state of South Dakota, step up and help us to pay for the cost of some of that defense. Because we did pay it. It was Public Defender's Office that did that case.
Well, there's at least 4 other communities that are beside, isn't it, that have state facilities, so like Pierre, Rapid City, Springfield, and what, I'm not sure what.
I mean, this goes to...
And Yankton, too, I suppose, out of the...
excuse me, juvenile facilities as well.
But, may I? Aren't they part of the consortium, the defense consortium? Those other communities are also part of the defense consortium.
Most of them are.
Yeah,
yes.
So what happens there?
They have a different risk pool they can tap into for those catastrophic type hits to their budget. We don't have that.
We've chosen not to belong to the legal pool.
Any other comments? Otherwise, I'd look on a motion if somebody wants to move this one forward.
I'll second John's, I think, motion.
Yeah.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of a resolution to establish responsibility for cost of prosecution and defense for persons charged with crimes in a state correctional facility, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. G.
G is the TIF resolution. And this would simply say that unless a municipality gets permission or approval from the county or another government entity to participate in the creation of that TIF, then the entity creating the TIF can only use their portion of the tax collection to support the TIF. And the other entities would then continue to receive their dollars. Like I said, in this particular instance, in our county, the auditor's office anticipates or calculates that it's pretty close to $300,000 right now, and that number is expected to grow almost double next year with some of the new TIFs coming online.
We've also discussed this one to death. Is there any comments on this one?
Here again, one of the arguments will be you'll have a lot of argument from second floor again, you know, they because of the development side of this thing. But I think it's a good idea.
No, I don't think we're opposed to TIFs. It's just that we shouldn't have to be responsible for losing our taxes unless we've approved it. We don't even get a vote at the table to say whether we can afford to have the TIF.
Yeah, but remember, you know, the original theory of TIF was that you take a property that would not otherwise be developed, and you use that TIF to do that. Unfortunately, they have expanded that into economic development now, and they're doing TIFs on areas that Sanford Complex is the best example of areas that probably would have been developed at some point anyway. But you know, that's going to be the argument. But you know, Rapid City's they got like 4 times the TIFs we got.
They have quite a bit more than that.
They've had a lot of them, but you've seen under the current administration that they're more aggressive on them, and at times they're very good. And if they came to the county and talked to us about it also, we might buy into it. We might say, yeah, there's no way this property would be developed if it wasn't for the TIF, and give it to them.
Yep.
But otherwise, I think this thing is a good compromise to help us.
Is there a motion for it?
There is.
Got a motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to a resolution to allow counties to exempt county property taxes from municipal tax increment finance districts or TIFs. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Same sign. Okay, the last one. It's a resolution to allow counties to receive allocations from increases in municipal sales taxes.
Commissioners, again, I mean, I just wrote this one up that, you know, their sales tax authorized by SDCL 10-52-2 and gross receipts tax that are authorized by 10-52A-2, and the way I structured this particular resolution, that whenever these rates for these revenues are increased or implemented after the effective date of this, you know, legislation, that the municipalities would have to negotiate a share with the county that they reside in. And again, I structure this as an increase or a new implementation of some of the provisions of these taxes. And that, as I understand by talking to some of you, you don't want to wait for an increase or an implementation of a tax in order to do that, you want to make a requirement to negotiate now for a share of those taxes, and that to provide services. So, but the resolution is structured right now as an increase or a new implementation of the tax authorized by these statutes.
This was my idea, and so I'm going to talk about it. And I've said, and it wasn't my idea first, that the county is the state is taxed enough, that there's a wrong distribution of taxes out there, and there continues to be. I don't think most municipalities or maybe even the state government is going to raise their tax structure anymore because they've basically signed on to no more taxes. The problem still is there's a distribution problem here. And I think that any entity out there that has raised their over what their base tax rate is should be sharing a portion of that with the counties that are doing the law enforcement out there, because as cities or the state grows, their problems are put on county government, but yet they're not providing any additional funds for any of the problems that come along with it. There aren't any drunks in the cornfield, and there aren't homeless issues in the cornfield, yet people in the counties come in and spend their monies in all the municipalities, and the problems come to the cities. And I think they should be sharing a portion of the taxes. I think taxpayers would get behind this because it wouldn't raise your property taxes. You're already paying these taxes. You're just not seeing the benefits of it. Then the county turns around and raises your property taxes. There's enough money to go around. It's just not distributed right. And I also don't know about negotiating if that's the fair way to do it. I wonder if the state should set a level that for every penny sales tax that's increased, a portion, and they can decide what portion that is, goes back to the counties to pay for law enforcement issues. So, sorry, it's my idea.
The only comment I'd have is that
Kelly.
I think it would have minimal effect on Minnehaha County. We've kind of taken advantage of every city of Sioux Falls taking advantage of every tax that's available out there. And, this would affect more counties where there isn't a city sales tax, and then all of a sudden they want to pick
How
it
do
up.
you see it doesn't affect us? That's just it. The city of Sioux Falls and our outlying municipalities have all added additional taxes.
Yeah,
If we
but-
get a portion of that taxes,
Are you retroactively saying
yes,
that?
and it might take
okay.
4 or 5 years to move it. If you raised it by a certain percentage, you might say, well, this year we're only raising, because obviously you can't just go out there and say, well, we're taking an extra 5% out of your money, because they can't afford that either. But in a slow increment. The other thing is that some of our municipalities contract with us for law enforcement. Well, that money needs to come right off the top and say they've already paid a portion of their collected taxes into the county of Minnehaha County for law enforcement.
Okay, I didn't understand it was
Yeah.
retroactive. So,
Yeah, it needs to be
eventually
retroactive.
your
It doesn't
goal
do
would
any
be
good.
to have a piece of the 2 cents at or the 3
Right.
cents or 4 cents.
And
depending
the
on
bed and booze tax, and it's not just Sioux Falls. Pennington County would, and if they don't want to use this tax, that's fine. But it should be available to everybody. So Aberdeen, who also has a county jail, anybody who's using law enforcement or has a big city, Brookings has a big city, Watertown, they all have cities that have additional taxes.
And you're pitting all of them against the counties is what, I can't see where any city would support this, including what.
But how many taxpayers are going to support it? Commissioner Peckus.
Well, I was just going to comment. I see Scott sitting back there. If you look at our comprehensive development plan, we've set quite a number of requirements. When people want to form a business outside of a municipality and they want to have it in rural South Dakota, in the rural county areas, we put a lot of requirements on them. And a lot of times we have people that, quite frankly, they want to be out in the counties so they don't have to pay city sales tax. And we've seen kind of interesting commercial areas get developed outside of Sioux Falls where people are actually actively looking at their bottom line saying, hey, I could avoid 2 cents on my charge here because I would be outside of Sioux Falls. And so suddenly that enables them to move into Minnehaha County. But when you think about the fact that we don't collect any of the municipal sales tax, but yet we have requirements in our comprehensive development plan that, of course, encourages people to locate in municipalities. Quite frankly, that's where we want them, because then they'll be driving on their roads. They aren't going to be banging up our county roads. So really, we put a lot of hurdles. In fact, if you have a rural business, you can't have more than 5 people visit within a given daytime hour, because we don't want to have too much wear and tear on the roads. Well, for me, logically, it does make sense that if you're going to be saying, okay, we're going to be excluding people from bringing businesses into rural Minnehaha County, quid pro quo, maybe we should get some of that municipal sales tax now that those people are spending money in those municipalities.
Any other comments? Is there a motion one way or another?
I'll make the motion.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
But you've got the gavel.
I'll second. What the heck?
I have a
Thanks,
motion
Jeff.
and a second. Are there any other comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
1. Motion passes 4 to 1. Okay.
I'm assuming, though, I need to amend it?
You need to amend it.
All right.
Madam Chair, if I might,
Yep.
I think all of these actually are just an extension of our budget discussions.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Really, we're not asking for, gay marriage or legalization of marijuana. We're just talking about finding a
Money.
nickel here or there. And on that TIF issue, for example, they have put a TIF in up at the Sanford Center. Of course, they don't have any money to develop that area without that TIF. And they expect 100,000 people to show up. Out of 100,000 people, will anyone go shoplifting? Will anyone go to Van Epps Park? Will anyone go fighting someone from the other team after the ball game? Will anyone be in a car crash? All those costs then come to the county. 100,000 people come to Sioux Falls. They're shopping, they're buying things, they're spending money. The money is all going to the city. And when that party is over, we pick up the bodies and we put them in our jail, and we're paying for it, and we get no revenue.
Well, may I also, just to echo a little bit, every one of these really deals about money. And I know we talk about money up in Pierre. It's essentially, that's what we do in legislative term. But, for example, we don't talk about state flags. We don't talk about county flags.
By the way, I did send a proposal to Ken for a county flag yesterday. I did some research, and every county in Ireland has a flag.
We don't have time for such nonsense.
Do you want to add that to the resolutions? But we don't. Look at these resolutions. They all revolve around money. It'd be interesting just to look at some of the proposals from our different sister governmental entities. The ones that are financially strapped probably focus on how can we raise revenue, and the ones that are actually very comfortable probably don't have to focus so much on the revenue portion. They can talk about interesting social context type issues.
All right, we're done with that conversation. We're going to move on to Minnehaha County Liaison Reports. Are there any reports? Commissioner Benega.
No, I have a question for Ken. In the past, when these things are brought to the association, when do they approve or decline these things? Are they going to do that in the August meeting so that we have the opportunity to reconsider to do some of these things on our own?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we could do any of them really on our own, and that the problem is that whenever there's any lobbying to be done or anything, the association will have a hands off. The way, there's really two shots on these, and that the resolutions committee will meet in early August.
15th.
Yep, early August to start the process. And they may very well at that particular date either move or recommend that they're going to table these or they amend them or whatever. The resolutions committee meets one more time, again in September.
At the convention.
Right at the convention, the 4th, and we have gone there before and have got them to change their mind from the August meeting to submit things or whatever. But it's really that then that last step in September as they come to, they will distribute the resolutions to all the members, that morning that they, right after that meeting, that here's the ones that we're recommending and here are the recommended actions, and then they go to the floor.
So for all practical purposes, we won't know what the final agenda is until the first part of October almost.
Correct. Right after the convention. We will know which of these were adopted at convention. And then, but in answer to your question, yes. I mean, even between convention and the legislative session, if we identify something new or somebody wants to bring a different idea forward that they would support, we have the ability to do that, but we're on our own as far as collecting the signatures for sponsorship, testifying, lobbying, etc. So.
There are 9 members on the resolution committee, according to the email I got. One of them is Dwayne Sutton, who was up there supporting the change in CPI. So,
Okay. Go on to liaison reports, Jeff.
We had a planning commission meeting last night and passed a resolution. We had in attendance a representative from the state DOT, and we had a couple of issues on the road up by Renner Corner, and the speed of traffic up there was a consideration from the public concerned about both those zoning issues. And we passed a resolution to ask the county commission to request the DOT to do a study up there about traffic. The woman that came from the DOT last night said that they generally look at all the traffic going by and figure out what 85% of the people are driving and then set the speed limit at that. So until people slow down, they don't have to slow down. But I still think that there's a hill there, there's a curve there, there's a busy intersection. I think, Scott, do you want to...
That's a resolution that comes to us, right?
Yes, and then we send it on to the DOT as our request.
Yes, thank you, Scott Anderson, representing the Planning Department. And Commissioner Barth's correct. We had a very good meeting last night. It involved a couple of rezoning requests that are going to be coming before you in the next couple of weeks. But it also involved Renner Sanitary Sewer District, which is basically an extension of Sioux Falls Sanitary Sewer District. So I thought it was very interesting when Commissioner Peckus talked about where we're concentrating growth. I mean, the city also has control over those sewer districts and where we can put infrastructure. But I think that it was a good conversation. Our department's going to be putting together a map which sort of is going to ask for the boundaries of where we would like this speed study to go. Then it goes to DOT in the regional office that does the studies in Mitchell. And Brooke White was here. She's one of their engineers, was very helpful. Really gave us some very good information on how they address access management points, how they address speed, the traffic. So that will be something that will be coming before you. As I understand it, anyone can ask for a speed study. So the Planning Commission made a recommendation to bring that forward to you and then ask you to send it on to the regional office in Mitchell, and then it'll get plugged into their schedule. There won't be a specific time. They're not going to jump right on it. It'll go into how it fits into their schedule, and they will look at if the speed is appropriate, the number of accidents, the number of access points in that given area. But we are seeing some development requests in that Renner area, and I think as the city grows and it falls into our comprehensive plan as it's in a transition area, and this is where we want growth to occur. So I think overall it's going to be a good thing, and we'll work closely with all the players, which is the Renner Sanitary Sewer District, the DOT, county planning, the developers. I mean, there's a number of people. We're all working together.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other liaison reports? Is there any new business?
Sioux Empire Fair, be there.
Is there any old business? Sioux Empire Fair, be there, 75. I have it written right here on my sheet. Friday through, starting on Friday and going through next week, Sunday. So, any other?
Move adjournment into exec session for contract negotiation.
Second.
Motion and a second for exec session. Adjourn the meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.